second chance in the game.
My name is Robert Pomazak. I'm the head football coach at St. Charles North High School, about 46 miles west of Chicago. And I'll be talking about designing the four-quarter program, a full year-round program built with attention, discipline, and skill. First thing we want to talk about is creating that action plan for your program, establishing that vision, the mission. For us, it's really simple. As a vision, we're going to talk about connecting our program to the community. On a day-to-day basis, our mission is going to be giving our student athletes and our parents the greatest experience of their high school career. Really, for you, it can be whatever your mission and vision is, but you have to establish what that's going to be. We're going to talk about feedback. We're going to reflect on what we've done in the past. We're going to look at what's added to the program, what's subtracted, what's multiplied it, and is something maybe divided it. And we're going to develop some growth outcomes so that we can move forward as a program. We're going to take the time as a staff to build our program with design and intent. And when I say design, that comes in from a holistic standpoint, looking at your program from all angles so that you can not only grow it as an X's and O's, which is really important, but you also can grow it from a player development standpoint, from a parent development standpoint, and really bring everybody into the program, getting something out of it. And then we're going to take that theoretical blueprint and we're going to utilize it to create a real live four-quarter program, 12 months, so that every day our kids and our parents and our staff are gaining from the program's experience in a multitude of different ways. And we're building investment, we're building accountability, and hopefully we're yielding some results. When we look at our four-quarter program, the first thing we want to talk about is how does this reflect what a business model does? And when we look at our Fortune 500 companies, they're going to have their 4 quarters, which is their fiscal year. They're going to go ahead and break that into 3 months, and then what that quarter really yields is going to be dividends for the investors and then also a financial report of the direction of the company. For us in a football program, we're kind of doing it the same way, but we're not using money. We're talking about where's the program been and where's the program going? And it's also from a holistic standpoint, but it's also from a very individual standpoint. Taking the time to look at all 100, 150, 200 players in your program and finding out how they're developing quarterly. How are they developing this 3 months? At the end of each quarter, we're going to give a state of the program evaluation. And we're going to communicate the results to those key stakeholders. We're going to talk to our parents about where their players are at, where their sons are at. We're going to talk to our staff at personnel meetings and talk about how players are developing within the system. We're going to talk to the staff about how we're developing and things that we're looking at in a very open forum. It's really important to look at the growth in both a macro and micro level so that we as head coaches can kind of navigate through some of the roadblocks or some of the barriers that might come up as we start to build our program up. Our philosophy at St. Charles North is that personal growth in each individual will lead to a collective and compound growth in the entire program. So from player 1 to player 100, we want to see some type of growth. Well, that's easy to say, but it's hard to quantify. How do we know if player B has gotten better? When we're looking at weightlifting, we can look at numbers, performance training, we can talk about change of direction, 40-yard dash times, but when we really break it down, how are we truly knowing if our kids are growing? So we're going to take a look at it throughout this presentation. First and foremost, here's how we break our quarters up. This is no different than how a business would do it. Quarter 1 is December through February. Quarter 2, March through May. Quarter 3, June through August. For us in Illinois, that's heavy summertime. We'll have 25 days of contact. If you're watching this from a state that has spring ball, you may have to rework this quarter system a little bit so that it works for your particular program. And then quarter 4 is going to be, the meat grinder, the frying pan, so to speak, September through November, which is your season. One thing I think that we do at our program at North that's a little unique is we're going to talk about development in 4 different quadrants. Physical, mental, tactical, and emotional. One thing that we want to do is develop our players holistically. We want to develop our players into being good people, but we also really want to develop them into being very good football players. So that really comes into us breaking things down so that we can compartmentalize their development, quantify it, and see if there's growth. From a physical standpoint, we're strictly talking about strength training outcomes. We pride ourselves on our performance training. We're going to do our 10-week cycles throughout the winter, throughout the spring, and throughout the summer. And we're going to have specific goals that each one of those is going to yield that prepares us for our season. Mentally, we're going to talk about our behavioral outcomes. What are the behaviors that we're trying to develop within our program? What are we going to accept? What are we not going to accept? And then tactical training is something which maybe you've heard of, but for us, it really comes down to our decisions and actions made during conflict. And I'm going to kind of dive into this a little bit, which I think is a unique aspect to what we do. And then finally, our emotional training. As we know, competitive sports, especially at the varsity level, can be a roller coaster of emotions. And we want to train our athletes and train our staff to handle these moments with grace, with dignity, but also in a positive way so that we can mold and exhibit the behaviors that we want to get out of our players when push comes to shove. When we talk about our 4-quadrant cycle, our development cycle, the first aspect is going to be the physical. This is built around our performance needs. So what we will do is we will test our athletes like many different programs do. We will test them in speed, agility. We'll also take height, body weight, body fat. We'll do a nutritional assessment. One thing I think we do that is unique is going to be take a sleep assessment where we're going to be monitoring sleep cycles, monitoring our kids throughout the entire 10 weeks to make sure that they are getting enough sleep. All of this data is used to elicit goals for our players for every 10 weeks that we want them to achieve. We will communicate this to each player. We will check up on this every other week to make sure that we're taking steps towards that goal achievement, and if need be, we might have to remediate the process. And each part of this physical training, I'm also the strength and conditioning coach, is something that we will take different parts of that training will have different results based off of the time of year. Whether it's the winter months, we're really trying to look at lean body mass and absolute strength and power, or in the spring when we're starting to develop our energy systems, we are going to make sure that we're keeping track of that data and we're making sure our players are going to be at peak performance when we need them to be. The second part of this quadrant is going to be the mental aspect. We talk about our behaviors that we want our players to elicit. Well, what does that really mean? Well, for us, it really comes down to behaviors that win. We're going to support behaviors that elicit us to play at our best, to believe in ourselves. For us, it comes down to being accountable, being a leader, being selfless, being invested, and being prepared. Those 5 things are going to be the behaviors that we will have no gray area on. We're going to clearly define this. We're going to make sure the players know what it looks like, and we are going to give them an outcome as to how this behavior will benefit you as a person, but also as a player and as a team. Everything we do in our program is built around these ideas. Whether it's on the field, off the field, in season, off season, there is no loophole to this behaviors that win mentality. One thing that we talk about with our staff, our players, and our parents is that we want to be an inclusive program from a mental aspect, but we will have exclusive expectations. We will welcome everybody into our program. We got a jersey for everybody. We are a non-cut sport. If I've got 200 jerseys, I'm going to have 200 players, but you have to be exclusive with the behaviors that we want. If you cannot exhibit those, if you cannot live up to the standard that we have, then it might be best for us to not be together because we are not going to change our standards. So while we want everybody within our program, they still have to be able to work within the behaviors and beliefs that we've set forth. One thing from our 4-quadrant moving forward is our third one, which is our tactical training. This is that Navy SEAL mentality. We're very fortunate at St. Charles North that we have a retired Marine on our staff, and he's brought to us this tactical training paradigm that we use throughout the summer and in-season months and out-of-season months. The Navy SEAL mentality is that you will not rise to your a level of occasion. You will fall back on your training. So for us, when things are toughest and when stresses are at their highest, we want our players to have a tool set that they can fall back on so that they can be well equipped to handle any of the adversity that they see. It's our goal to train our athletes to be at their best when the stresses are at their highest. This is a progressive training program that's implemented to help build decision-making skills under stress. I'm going to kind of go through how we build this throughout the entire off-season and in-season in a very unique and fun way, in my opinion, that is totally applicable to the on-field aspect of the game of football. Never would I equate football to military in terms of the importance of it. It is not life and death by any stretch of the imagination, but you cannot deny the correlation that the two have when we talk about terminology, when we talk about tactical and movement training and spatial awareness. All of those things are very, very important, including call and response when we're giving a play and we need to get a response out of the players. We will start with simple terms and we will move to complex problem solving and then add stressors to that as the months progress. Our final quadrant is going to be the emotional aspect of our training. And again, we spend a lot of time talking about how the mind processes different situations. And for us, winning always will start in the mind. One thing we will do with our program is give them a survey at the end of the season, and we'll talk about what is your biggest fear moving into the next season. And without a doubt, every year the biggest fear is fear of failure. So for us, that's really important that if 75% of our players are going to come into the season with their biggest fear, above public speaking, above anything else, being fear of failure, then we have to train their mentality and train their mindset so that we can get over that fear. We are in a very affluent area. We are in an area of Illinois where the hardships are different for every single player, but we want to make sure that when we're on the football field, we've trained each player so that they can handle the adversity that is going to be brought their way. And more importantly, we're going to translate that to off the field. We all go through tough times. Our players are no exception, so we want them to have the opportunity to reach back and fall back on some mindset training that's going to get them through those tough moments, I should say. Again, selfishly, this is probably the area that we have focused on so much because it was one of my biggest deficits as a head coach moving into this position. And a lot of what we do when you look at our development model are things that when I look in the mirror, I want to develop. And I figure if it's good enough for my players, it better be good enough for me. So again, selfishly, we all take part in it. I think that's a good model to adhere to as you look yourself in the mirror. Find out where do you want to improve and can you use that within your program. Quarter one, again, is December through February. We just got done with the season. Like this year, we were fortunate to play in the state championship game, so we got done late in November. So this is just the time to reintroduce our players, our parents, and our staff to whatever the newest version is going to be. We've taken the feedback, we've taken the evaluations, we've done our pre-season, our pre-off season testing, and now we're using all this data to say, okay, where does the program go from here? And every year it's different. Whether you had a great success or maybe an off year, it's going to be totally different every single year that you go into. One thing that I do is I just take that rookie mentality and how can we start this program and take it to the next step? We're going to explain those additions and subtractions to our parents, our players, and our staff. I don't want anything that we're doing to be a surprise. Our calendar is public, our notes in our parent meeting is public, and more importantly, our parents are going to be in that discussion, and our players are going to be in that discussion, the staff is going to be there. We are never doing this from a top-down approach. When we look at our quadrant development, I know this is wordy, but I'll highlight some different points. From a physical standpoint, we're looking at postseason rehabilitation, depending on the player. Again, our players who didn't play a ton, we're going to be more aggressive and we're going to get them into a strength, lean body mass building depending on their goals. Their cycle is going to be a little more aggressive. For my two-way starter who played 100 snaps a game, we're going to be looking at that rehabilitation, moving him into prehabilitative work, and then we're going to start to load, increase the volume, increase the intensity on the load. One thing that we're going to do for all players is nutrition and sleep assessment. We'll give our players a sample nutrition guide depending on the gains that we want them to make, from body fat assessment to weight and where we would like to project them. All of this is communicated to the parents. None of it is done behind anybody's back. This is public information for them to look at, and we will communicate that with them. We need our parents in at this bottom floor because, again, they're the ones who are cooking the food. So if we need players to gain weight or if we need players to reduce fat, we have to get them on board with what we're doing. I would say 95% of our ultimate goal during this phase for most players is to build lean body mass and increase ground of force production. I believe we don't have a field house. We're limited on space. So if I can reduce body fat and increase ground to force output, build lower body strength, then I think we're going to make a faster, more dynamic athlete. From a mental standpoint, early in quarter one, we're going to take a break. We're going to allow our players to have that mental foot off the gas pedal. We've just spent so much time preparing, going through stressful situations. We're going to reinforce our values in a very fun, lighthearted way. We will do a platoon challenge with our athletes in the off season, where we'll do it by position, and they can earn points by every team function that we have. And we'll have every different week of our off-season program dedicated to one of those values. But by and large, it's a chance for us to kind of just get back together, focus on personal growth, and take a little bit of a break from the mental grind that they just endured. Our tactical training is really based on simple principles, call and response. To dive a little bit deeper into this, we're really going to have two words that we use for our kids. If I say ears, they will say open, regardless of where they are. If we're in the weight room, I say ears, they will say open. If I say eyes, they will say click. So case in point, we're out on the football field in the state championship game, and our back is against the wall. It's a TV timeout. Our players come off the field, and they're scatterbrained. I yell eyes, they yell click, which means they're going to get their eyes right to me. I say ears, they say open, which means I'm going to have something very important to say, and now I've got everybody's undivided attention. I can go ahead and give the directives for the defense to go through, and everybody's heard it. This simple principle has yielded so many results for us, because in the weight room we can do it, in the hallways I can do it. It's one of those things that the kids 20 years from now, if they hear it, they'll respond to it. And this is the very basis of our tactical and behavioral training with them, is if we say something, we better get a response, and it has to be appropriate. And it's very specific, and every coach does it, and players are not allowed to do it. It is just a coach response, or a coach call and a player response. We will have some fun, competitive opportunities during that time as well to develop our tactical training, but it'll never be football involved. We will keep the football away. We're just going to go out and we may play dodgeball. We may do something that requires maneuvering and teamwork, capture the flag, but it'll never be football related, because we need to take that time off. From an emotional standpoint, we're going to build the connection. This is my opportunity to kind of take off the head coach's hat, put on my strength and conditioning hat, and get to know our players. Our coaching staff is great about getting into the weight room. I have a lot of out-of-building coaches, but it's their chance to get to know players on a one-to-one basis. We will then have one-on-one meetings from a positional standpoint. I'll meet with every player one-on-one in our program. It's a huge amount of time on my part, but if you forget one kid, that's the kid you're going to lose, and we always want to be able to emotionally connect at a deeper level with our players. This particular slide just kind of shows some of the things that we do. I use Google Classroom and Google Forms quite a bit. It allows us to really get information out quickly, get evaluations out quickly, and get data. We will do a recruiting presentation for our players that are looking to be recruited. Instead of doing one meeting with every parent for 40 different meetings, we've done it in one night. We'll go through the entire recruiting process, hopefully answer some questions for them. And then that bar graph is just an example of our player metrics that we use for our program. We'll evaluate every player on a 1 through 5 scale through 15 different metrics, from on the field to off the field, including academics. 5 being varsity all-conference, 4 being a varsity player, 3 being sophomore, 2 being freshman A, and 1 being freshman B. And this just gives us what we call like the player's Madden number, and it allows us to look at, in a quantifiable way, how many 90% kids do we have, how many 80% kids, 70%. And this will be the baseline testing that we do, and we will reevaluate kids every quarter, with hopefully seeing a quantifiable increase and taking that 80% and moving some kids up to the 90, 70 moving up. That's really the goal. That 90% is probably going to be your 90% regardless, so we're looking to bump up those percentages. As I go through the analytics throughout the years, I have found that this is one of those things. If we have a certain amount of players over 80%, we usually have a good year. And that's including on the field and off the field stuff. For quarter 2, we segue into the spring. We are highly a multi-sport program. We have about 93% of our kids play more than one sport, and March through May is usually that season with lacrosse and baseball. So we will have about 75% of our kids in another sport, which is great. So for us, the main objective is just to keep building steam off of what we did in the winter months. We've set the expectations. We have this 10-week body of work where we have most of our program is with us in the winter, about 115 kids out of 150. So now we have this body of work that we can continue to keep conversation going. What I will do is I'll look for red flags based off of that 10 weeks, and I feel like it's my job as a head coach to immediately address red flags. If there's an issue, we are going to talk about it. If it's on the practice field and we're not handling our business in the classroom, we will start in the classroom. We will take time off the field to make sure we're doing it. And likewise, when we're in the weight room during the months of March through May. This is the time to reinforce the behaviors that we want to get out of our players, and we will not allow that bar to dip at all. If anything, it becomes a little bit more scrutinized because that's the main focus of what we're looking at without there being game planning and such. We're going to build that trust model. We're going to stay connected, but we're also going to start to add that competence aspect of things with our players that I'll get into in a second. When we look at the 4-quadrant development of what we're doing from a physical standpoint, our training shifts to more of a technical and skill acquisition. We'll start open gyms. In the state of Illinois, we can have open gyms where it's basically captain's practices, but that's going to be something that's structured by our captains with input from our coaching staff. We're going to develop skills and techniques. We'll look at a technique, we're going to work on it throughout the spring, and then hopefully when we get to the summer months, we can develop that into an actual acquisition of a skill. We are going to add our energy systems training. We're going to start training for the summer conditioning. This actually begins our energy systems training where our kids will go off campus and we'll train with our linemen one day and then our skills the other. We call it Ram and Cheetah to give it a brand. The junior high kids are involved in that as well. They can come in and train there as well. And it's just something that's been competitive and fun. And we'll separate the two linemen and skill groups into a competition. And they'll get points for showing up, they'll get points for workouts, they'll get points for all the different things that I'll get into when I talk about our platoon challenges. From a mental standpoint, probably what I'm proud of the most is we start our 10-week leadership curriculum. Every other month we'll bring in a leadership coach who I've hired, is a friend of mine, and we'll do a book study and we'll go through and he will develop a curriculum that's going to be directed towards where do we want the program to go. For us, it's talking about sustained excellence this year. So we pick a book that talks about having a positive mental attitude and how to have sustained excellence. And it takes me completely out of the picture, which is great because as we know, there's plenty to do and allows our kids to have a true outside voice and ears that they can talk to. And the information that they give to that person and the information that they yield to better our program is amazing. The players have to fill out an application for that. It's a zero tolerance rule that if you miss once, you're out. Because if you do this program, you're investing in yourself and we're investing in you because we've paid for this training. Players that do this training are allowed to then apply for captainhood over the summer, or captainship, I should say. And we found that this little stepping stone has really taken off and our players are well equipped to be the leaders of our program after that. Our tactical training, we shift to a competition model. We take that competition of team sports to more individualized sports. It's really going to be about the weight room. How are you attacking the man in the mirror from a developmental model? Are we reaching our goals? If we're not, why? We really kind of look at how I can better myself. It's the one time during the off season I will tell our players to be selfish. It's about you getting better with the idea that if you get better, we get better. We will do a positional study. All of our coaches are on board. I use Google Classroom for the defensive backs. We'll do case studies on different defensive backs on how they play, how they move, techniques that they use. We'll use Screencastify to kind of talk through game planning and how to effectively utilize a game plan. All of those things that we assume kids know how to do that they really don't. Like they're digital natives to Snapchat and Instagram, but they don't know how to watch film. They don't know how to read a game plan. They don't know how to properly assess an opponent, so we will use the off months to do that. I'd rather do it in March through May than in November when we've got a Division I athlete going against us and the playoffs are on the line. From an emotional standpoint, we'll just build off our E+R=O paradigm. We'll start talking to them about guided discussions, bringing different aspects of the season that happen. We'll also use the weightlifting opportunities or the performance training sessions to ask them what went well, what didn't go well, and how are we going to get better. I want the kids to take ownership. I don't have all the answers. The less I can do, the better. If they start to drive the bus, then I think our program's in a good spot. Again, here's just some highlights. That's our leadership training. We'll do a freshman signing day, which we used to be able to do. Now the IHSA says we can't, but we've turned this to a program commitment day. So what we do is we bring our incoming freshmen, we set them up on the field, and we will have a table with banners, and we will pledge and commit as a program to our incoming freshmen, which I have found to be a really nice gesture because our kids appreciate it. They get a little bit of swag, they get a chance to see what the program is, and then finally they end with like a procession handshake with our entire program. It's always a fun day that produces some great pictures, and it just builds the program from the inside out. We'll also attach ourselves to the youth programs. We'll do a free coaches clinic. This year we started a Sunday Night Lights where we opened up our doors to the field and let parents and dads and kids come out and play touch football. Three Sundays in May, which was fun. Just any opportunity to get our kids on our football field. As we move into quarter three, this is in the state of Illinois when, in our opinion, the season really begins. June through August. In the state of Illinois, we get 25 days of contact with our athletes. At the freshman level, we'll limit that to 20 days. At the sophomore level, we'll do 22 to 23, and at the varsity level, we will use all 25 days. It's important, in my opinion, to tier that program so that we're not flooding the incoming freshmen with an overload of things for them to worry about. They're transitioning into the high school from an academic standpoint. We're going to go with a 4-day-a-week program for them, and then our sophomores will get a ramped up version, but a tailored down version of the varsity, and then the varsity is really full go. During this time, we'll cover everything from scheme to 7-on-7 to character development and team building. This is the essential building block for us as far as our team goes. We will walk out of the 6 weeks of summer as one cohesive unit. We will understand what our first 3 weeks are going to look like as far as our preparation and the benchmarks that we've set for ourselves. And we will get to know each other at a very intimate level, and we will be a one unit. And it's really fun because you watch a group of individuals come together through the highs and through the lows and become a really solid unit. When we look at our quadrants, our physical aspect is building the athlete up to handle the grind of the season. We will not tailor or taper down our progressions, but we're really going to focus on building the armature that we need to get ourselves through a 14-week season. So we're talking about circumference, lean body mass, soft tissue prehab, increasing our recovery practices through myofascial release, cold baths, whatever it may be. We'll rotate those through. Talk about stability and mobility in the joints and connective tissues. We'll have a rotation for that. And then we really ramp up our energy systems. And when I talk about energy systems, it's really talking about how the body effectively uses oxygen, moving through aerobic, anaerobic, those types of things. We are going to get our kids to the point that when they get out of the summer, they are ready to play a four-quarter game. And it's something that we spend a lot of time on. We monitor the reps that they're taking. And we monitor this at an individual level because there's different kids who are different volume players for us throughout the season. As we look at the mental aspect of things, cognitive development takes a major shift into scheme recognition. We're using Just Plays, we're using Huddle, we're using film analysis, Google Classroom, Screencastify, anything we can to target our kids' cognitive development. We're going to make sure that kids are learning it. We're targeting all the different learning methodologies. It's important for us to assess those methodologies and remediate when necessary. So we really start to add that football aspect of things in the summer. From a tactical standpoint, we really, again, amp up our decision action cycle progression. We're going to be then taking all of the simple call and response and now going into on-field maneuvers where we'll be on the field and we will tell them directionals to move. We make this fun. We put rabbits out on the field, which are different players, and they have to then, as a platoon, with one person as the platoon leader, we'll go ahead and give them directives through call and response to go 110 yards and find where that rabbit is. We'll progress that throughout the season. We'll turn the lights off. We'll take players off. And it really becomes an opportunity for the kids to learn how to communicate, learn how to listen, for our key leaders to learn how to lead, and for our guys who don't want to lead to learn how to follow, which is probably just as important as those guys who want to lead, because a lot of kids don't necessarily know how to follow appropriately. We'll culminate that with a big on-field water balloon fight between our platoons, where we'll set up obstacles and they have to use the terminology and call and response. It's turned out to be one of our more fun progressions that we go through. And I highly encourage any of you who are interested in it to dive into doing something along those lines. From an emotional standpoint, we talk about player ownership. We will have a culture night. The first evening of every summer is going to be parents and players included, and we will have a keynote speaker who's going to talk about whatever the theme for that year is. For us this year, it's about changing your best and achieving sustained excellence. And we'll go through our entire culture playbook, and we'll talk about our behaviors, our expectations, player-coach expectations, player-to-player expectations, parent-to-player, and so on and so forth. But everybody walks out of that evening with a clear understanding of who we are as a program. We'll excuse the parents after an hour, and then our players will be with us for 2 hours when we kind of go into some more of the deeper diving things, when we want to start talking about who we are as individuals. And throughout the summer, our players will have an opportunity to present and talk about our culture in depth as a group. Again, here's kind of the lay of the land. One thing I kind of want to talk about a little bit is what you see on the screen here. We do a player draft at the end of every summer or at the end of every school year. Like next Monday, we have our player draft. Every player within our program, sophomore and varsity, is going to be eligible to be drafted. Our players who went through the leadership program have to apply, and we'll pick 6 leaders to be platoon leaders. We name them after our value system, and then they will draft players. And they'll make a platoon of 10 to 12 players, and then throughout the summer, they'll acquire points. And our point system is different every year, but this year it's going to be our accountability value is going to be putting in your strength and conditioning numbers on our online program. Selfless points is if you do something off campus and you document it through social media. Like we had a young man who changed a tire, and he took a picture and he tweeted it and put my handle on it. That gets him and his teammates points. Preparation is always wearing the same. If we ask you to be in blue shirt and black shorts, you have to be dressed appropriately. Investing is being at a segment. If we have a workout, you have to be there to get a point. And then leadership, at the end of every week, your platoon will pick one player who has exemplified what it means to be a North Star football player, and they will pick that person to be their leader for that week, and that player gets 5 points. The long story short is that as players earn points, they have to get to 50. Once they get to 50, we put the stripe on their helmet. We call it our Earn Your Stripe program, and you truly have to earn it. If players don't earn 50 because of lacrosse or travel baseball or whatever, then they're not going to have their stripe, and that'll go through it. They'll start the season without it. And it's one of those things where it works because there's peer pressure going on, but kids also want to earn the right to wear our colors. And then at the end of the summer, the team with the most points will get their warm-up paid for. And again, there's a monetary investment. You know, the warm-ups for 12 kids is going to cost us around $1,500, but they wear it with pride and they truly have earned it, because to win that 2 months of work is a hard thing to do. We go on our dead period. We all go on vacation, and then we come back in August for the quarter 4, and this is truly the frying pan. And we all know that as head coaches, we can go into reptilian mode, and that's really where we're just surviving. And all of the great work that we've done has now been put on the back burner, and we're worried about Team X, Y, and Z on Friday. And we lose focus on who we are and what the main points are. The main thing doesn't become the main thing anymore. So for us, it's time to take stock and to walk the walk. We will talk to our players about how we're going to handle the first 3 weeks of the season. At the end of our summer, we will go to NIU, and our players will meet as a group, and they'll set up 3-week benchmarks. And we'll come back and rehash those after the break, and we'll talk about what type of team do we want to be over the next 3 weeks of our season. And the great thing about not setting benchmarks and not setting goals, it allows you to modify and remediate. And at no point should our goal be to win a state championship, because that can or may not happen. If you go 0-3, you have to have a plan for that. Finally, what we talk about is we will use the high and low moments to evaluate the program. You know, it's great when you win, but it's also an opportunity to learn when you don't win. The last 2 weeks of our season this past year, we lost in the last play of the game. So we kind of limped into the playoffs. But that was an opportunity for us to really focus on who we are and how are we going to respond to this event. What type of team do we want to be? We've trained for this moment, and we're going to rise above it, and our best football is ahead of us. And every player in that room believed it. It was an opportunity for us to really put up or shut up. And as a staff and as our players, they stood up and they were able to fall back on the 11 months of training that they've done and put forth a great effort to get us to the state championship. So this is kind of how we look at the four-quarter quadrants. Our physical aspect, we are going to remain consistent with our strength training. We will continue to gain strength throughout the entire season, but obviously that's going to be on an individual basis. Our players who are not playing a ton on a Friday, who are more JV players, are going to be on a more accelerated program with lower repetition, higher sets, and higher intensity, where our high-volume players are really going to be working on high-volume sets with the opportunity to get increased mobility, rehabilitation, prehabilitation work going so that we can get them for the long haul. The focus is to keep the players on the field, bar none. We want to graduate those players on the JV, get them physically strong enough and capable on the field to get out there on a varsity Friday night. And then those players who are really kind of, where the sausage is made, so to speak, we want to keep them healthy and on the field so that they can help us win football games on a Friday night. So yes, it is individualized, but we always talk about that to the kids, and we make sure that it's fair. You know, it's not equitable. Equitability and fairness are two different things. So we will be fair with everybody, but oftentimes it might not be as equitable with one guy doing one thing, another guy doing another. From a mental aspect, we are going to talk about just the development in our 4 areas. We're going to talk about retention. What do we remember moving into August? Because as we know, when kids go away and coaches go away for a week, we come back and forget half of what we learned. So we want to see what we retained. And then we want to look at how we're executing. Are we executing what we've taught them? And then we're going to evaluate, just like any coach would. And then we're going to expand on areas that we know we can expand on. And areas that need to be remediated, we're going to do that. From a tactical standpoint, we're going to apply everything that we've done. The training is in. Now it's time to apply it. I talked about that situation in the state championship game where we needed to kind of fall back on our training, and that's when it has to happen. And we are not going to get away from that. From an emotional standpoint, we are really going to kick into high gear our mindset training. We are very particular about how we go about our business throughout the Thursday nights into Friday game days. We're going to talk about the type of environment we're going into. We're going to talk about playing with confidence, playing with courage, never being in between. We're going to be 100 miles an hour. There's going to be moments when you need to be confident because we've trained for it, and there's going to be moments when you need to be courageous. Case in point, it was 1st and goal at the 3-yard line in the state semifinals, and the opponent had the ball in a tied ball game with 1:30 left, and nobody on our sideline or the 11 guys on the field knew for sure if we were going to stop them. And they just had to be courageous every snap of the ball. They put themselves in a situation to get a field goal, and then they sold out and were able to block that kick. And we ended up winning that game and taking our community to its first state championship in over 110 years. And that's just one of those moments where you just got to be courageous. And our kids have talked to us about that. When we rally back and we go back and interview the seniors and we talk about moments and things they learned, that mindset training is one thing that always comes up with consistency. Looking at our quarter 4 highlights, we will do a contact day practice where we'll invite the parents in to see what we're doing. We'll do a jersey presentation for all of our players to present their jersey at our scrimmage game to a person of significance in their life. We'll do a mom's camp, a dad's bags, a freshman breakfast, any opportunity to connect the program. We will do that. It is just, there are really no parameters that we won't go around if we can't connect our program. Final thoughts on this is focus on the results of efforts to create the ultimate experience for your players. Is what you're doing really creating the experience that you want to get? And you need to ask those questions. You can't assume it. I do believe winning does matter. Regardless of what we've talked about, winning is always something that we're talking about to our players, to our staff, to our parents. We want to win. Winning drives us. Winning creates a great culture. People want to be around winners, and we want to associate with winners. So it is certainly something that we're going to focus on and not push off to the side. But there are right ways to do it, and there are incorrect ways to do it. But we also feel that wins are the product of the work we do from December till November, Thanksgiving weekend. It's not going to happen in one particular day. And we can always strive to improve our program, and most times, in my opinion, it's not through X's and O's. It's through what people say, the Jimmies and the Joes, and how we're going about our business. Again, if you want to contact me, my name is Robert Pomazak, and it's robert.pomazak@d303.org, and my Twitter handle is @RobertPomazak. Thank you.